seems to get lost in that question is that, as Bob said, and I agree, we would really like to see the data, because if there is asymptomatic transmission, it impacts certain policies that you do regarding screening, et cetera. But the one thing historically people need to realize, that even if there is some asymptomatic transmission, in all the history of respiratory-borne viruses of any type, asymptomatic transmission has never been the driver of outbreaks. The driver of outbreaks is always a symptomatic person. Even if there's a rare asymptomatic person that might transmit, an epidemic is not driven by asymptomatic carriers.
Reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. It's easy to become distracted. After all, people often spend their lives consciously distracting themselves through all kinds of means to avoid the painful reality of their existence or wanting to let go of their past. In truth, we all do it to a greater or lesser extent. Spiritual teachings and enlightened personal development organisations, like the HeartMath Institute, exhort us to drop into the heart. I know that, along with almost everyone else these days, the reality in quotes which surrounds us is profoundly depressing and seemingly without end. It is like an invisible dead hand crushing any hope and optimism we have. Many of us also know that if enough people feel the wish fulfilled of a new earth, it will come about. The mainstream bias and media narrative is hiding in plain sight. I can't believe anyone who is reading this post buys fully into the government, BBC, CNN, etc. narrative. However, it's difficult not to buy into some of it, simply because the persistent illusion is more comforting than the truth. My own introduction to this life was, in the eyes of my parents, a secret that had to be maintained. I blame them for nothing. They were wonderful parents, and like everyone else, acted in what they saw as my and their best interests. I never know whether I signed up for truth activism prior to this incarnation, or if it was a consequence of being encouraged to always look outside of myself for answers. To this day, I believe in the ideals of justice, fairness, and the wonderful words enshrined in the US Declaration of Independence. For most of my life, I had never bought into the God thing. Our first encounter with other human beings is with our family. I'm well aware that a minority, perhaps larger than I can imagine, are not born into a family. That family may be extended and or be part of a community. A country is a collection of communities. God help us all, in brackets I'm a believer, if the day ever comes that we regard the state as our parents. Anyone who takes the time to study psychology knows that the most significant influences on our lives, especially during the first 6 to 7 years, are those who raised us. We also know that all kinds of trauma, accidental and deliberate, have a massive impact. Add to the mix the contemporary cultural conditioning of entitlement, victimhood, and unlimited aspiration, unsupported by the necessary talent or effort, and we have an unbelievably dangerous cocktail. If you doubt that, pay a visit to the American cities currently being ravaged by rioters. I've repeatedly said on this site that a notional hierarchy of suffering helps no one. Few people, it is still far too many, have suffered the kinds of depravity at last being reported in the media. There are glaring and massive exceptions, human trafficking and sexual abuse, to a situation in which one's personal trauma is another person's inconvenience. Having worked with male survivors of sexual abuse many years ago, there is not a single person I would wish their nightmares upon, save for their perpetrators. I believe it is called justice. Where is all this leading to? A number of commentators have observed that privileged young people involved in the US riots are operating out of a position of personal trauma. And I would have to agree. But there is hope. There is always hope. We are all here on this earth for a reason. It would take virtually all of the earth's resources to help all 7 billion of us to realise what that purpose is. What will it take? What does it take for people to wake up to the reality that we are spiritual beings having a human experience? Marxism. I was a Marxist for many years, denies the existence of God. That you cannot go to church during this pandemic, that God has been under attack for many years, and that hell on earth surrounds us, should tell you all you need to know. I will leave you with a quote from one of my favourite sources, the Joseph Communications. In this case, it is from the incredible book Transmission, available from Vanderlight Media. You are an angel. You are an angelic being. You have been coming here for some time, and you come here repeatedly with different sets of clothes in order to experience. And the amount of time you are here is dependent on the amount of challenges you can face versus the effects of the field in being detrimental to your body. If you want to know about the field, find out from the Joseph website. My one-line answer to just about every problem has always been love. Love is the answer. Love heals. It is, and it does. But life is a little more complicated than that at the moment. So step into your angel persona. Rise above the static of the propaganda and the insanity. But remember to wear your mask. Have a great day.